Okay, if we can help cure or prevent certain diseases like Alzheimer's, leukemia, even those who are blind, paralyzed, why wouldn't we, Stem cell research is a huge controversy on whether it should be legalized or not. And I think there are 3 reasons why stem cell research should be legal. One, scientists should be given the opportunity to help fight and cure diseases through their research instead of being restricted because of what people are afraid of, what the research may lead to. 2, who knows what great things can come from this research, even cancer, So, and then 3, stem cell research can be practiced ethically and will be known as the future in medicine and would give insights about basics of the human body. There was also a debate between Senator Collins and his legislators. He said this: it is estimated that there are more than 100 million Americans that are afflicted by this disease or disabilities that have potential to be treated through this promising research. He also mentioned that the government would establish clear standards to ensure that this research is conducted ethically. So that just shows the research will be conducted ethically, and it's not going to be using embryonic stem cells to use negatively. They're going to use it to help people with certain diseases and stuff like that. So also, Jane Matka is the president of the New Jersey Association for Biomedical Research, said stem cell research is vital to finding cures and genetic diseases. This is the future, and we need to understand how stem cells work and then try to develop therapies from the information that we gather through the research in the laboratory. So let me explain to you a little bit more about embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells are cells that regenerate certain cells in our body, so through cell division. So let's say somebody who is paralyzed from the neck down, they would use these stem cells, but they wouldn't use the stem cells exactly. They would use that outermost layer of the stem cell, which is called the blastocyst. The blastocyst is this part of the cells that are able to replicate and regenerate certain tissue and bones and muscles and things like that. So it's not like we're using the embryo itself to, clone and regenerate certain things in our body. It would use a certain part of the blastocyst in the stem cell. So there's a story that I read a while ago, and it has to do with this scientist. I don't really know his name. I read an article a long time ago, and he was late to work, and he was rushing, and he was speeding into his parking lot. And as he sped through the stop sign, he saw a police officer sitting there watching him. So he's like, shoot, I'm probably going to get a ticket as he's parking in his parking lot. And he rushes into his laboratory. Hopefully the police officer won't follow him and stuff. Next thing you know, he sees the cop come into his office, and he thought he was going to get a ticket right there. But the next thing you know, the cop sits down with him and says, I heard you can do this type of research, da-da-da. Next thing you know, he's asking the researcher to help him with his son, who was blind. And his son went blind through a certain car accident, hit his head or something. So the researcher was like, I'm not allowed to even have this conversation with you legally. And you know what? If laws were passed, I would be able to help your son. But since it wasn't legal in the state that he was researching in, he was not able to help this man's son. So I think it's really vital for us to take interest into this, into the subject, and we shouldn't just blow off the research just because of people's religious views. I'm sure some of these researchers have religious views themselves and believe that God gave them this knowledge so that they can help people and help cure certain diseases in people. So there's way too much at stake for us to just eliminate those negative views towards the research, and I think stem cell research is a good thing, and we should take the initiative in conducting furthermore.
All right, Trevor, what did you think?
Well, I liked your preview, and your thesis was very clear. I didn't feel lost at all. You had a solid outline. However, the transitions were a little hazy to me, so I wasn't sure when you were beginning one thing and ending, and it all kind of seemed slurred together. I wasn't sure where you were at. I was curious about the term blastosphere. Is that what it was? Blastocyst. My question was how relevant is that to the embryo, and so maybe answering that question may have been just to diffuse my rebuttal just during the presentation. I thought the testimony was worked very well into the story, and it was also a good conclusion to your overall presentation. I don't have any critiques on your presentation style. I think you handled it well, accurate, no nervous tensions, anything classic, maybe pretty good.
All right. The rhetorical question and the topic that you're dealing with are clearly identified in the introduction. However, since the restrictions have been lifted and funding has been increased, you're really advocating a policy that's already in place now. I guess what you ought to be doing is shifting a little bit and making the argument about why what we're doing is morally correct or necessary, because you don't need to argue that it should be legal anymore, because it is, which makes your story about the cop kind of apocryphal and definitely dated. So that's a little bit problematic. There's a very solid setup of the outline and what the supporting material, what the structure is going to be. Some of the quotes that you had sounded a little out of context. It sounds like you're setting up some information about how the stem cell controversy is going to work. And instead of talking about the controversy, it mostly talks about how stem cells work. So there's a little bit of shift there, and you're focusing on some informative material rather than on the controversial stuff. I didn't hear any data other than speculation that said that stem cells actually achieve any of these results. So if we're making this an argument about the need for this kind of research, we need to have some better data that shows that this is produced or is likely to produce these results. It seems very speculative at this particular point. You're dealing with the opposition argument, mostly results in kind of an equivocation of this is all being some religious objection, and ignores ethical questions that people have about the source of the embryos that are being used for this process. And I think that that's a limited view of that argument. On the presentation, if I'm just listening to you, you do a really good job, because I think there's a good variety in your voice, and there's good inflection, and you sound smooth for the most part. So you don't really sound like you're reading, but when the first half of the speech, when I'm looking at you, that's all you're doing is reading for the first couple of minutes. You're looking down, you've got those notes, you're going through them. Now, there is a point at which you kind of break out of that and you look up and you start talking to us, and I thought that that's when you were most effective, when you're doing that. Unfortunately, that's the part where the evidence material seems to break down, and it's less and it's kind of, you're just summarizing ideas at that point instead of offering us proof on those points. So that's a little bit problematic. It's a little underdeveloped, so there's probably plenty more room for additional material. Thank you.